Good day, students. You're welcome to today's class. Today we'll be discussing the topic poetry. What is poetry? Poetry is the art of writing poems, while a poem is the collection of words written to inspire ideas, imagination, or emotion. Take note of the word written. To some of us, you think poetry is all about song. It's not song, it can also be written. Poetry is written in lines and stanzas, and it includes rhyme and rhythm. Now we'll be looking at an example of a popular poem. My mother, who sat and watched my infant head, when sleepy on my cradle bed, and tears of sweet affection shared, my mother, when pain and sickness made me cry, who gazed upon my heavy eye, and wept for fear that I should die, my mother, who taught my infant lips to pray, and love God's holy book, and day, and walk in wisdom pleasant way, my mother. And can I ever cease to be affectionate and kind to thee, who was so very kind to me, my mother? Now, if you observe, this particular poem has 6 stanzas, and each of the stanza is made up of 4 lines. Now you can see that a number of lines makes up what? A stanza. Also, if you take note of the ending of each of the lines, there is a particular sound, and this sound reoccur in subsequent lines, that is in the lines below them. Now, I'm talking about types of poems. We have several types of poems, but for the purpose of this class, we'll be discussing 4 types of poems. They are epic, lyric, ballad, and dirge. Now, epic is the type of poem that tells stories of the achievement of heroes. It can also be called an heroic poem. So it is important to know that an epic is long and narrative, that is, it tells stories. Now, if you look at the story of King David in the Bible, after he had killed Goliath and done other things, some women gathered together and started singing that King David killed 10,000. That's an example of an epic. We have 2 types of epic. They are folk and literary epic. Folk epic can also be known as primary epic. It is a type of epic that tells stories of real-life heroes or legends who has achieved great victories for their countries. And this kind of epic is usually passed down by the words of mouth, that is orally. It is being passed from one generation to another through the words of mouth. Now you can see the folk epic is a distinct type of epic. Now let's talk about literary epic. Literary epic can also be known as the secondary epic or art epic. It imitates the folk epic. Unlike the folk epic, the literary epic is written, and the idea of the poem is based on the idea of the poet, that is, the hero that is being created or talked about by the poet is not a real hero, but based on the imagination of the poet. Now we'll be talking about the poem lyric. Lyric is a type of poem that expresses the feelings and emotions of the poet. It is usually short and meant to be sung to a musical instrument called a lyre. To some of you, you must have sat down some time ago and just put words together to talk about or to give expression to your feelings about any subject matter, that is anything. It could be the sun, the moon, butterflies, and the rest of them. So you can write a poem on any topic of your choice. That's an example of what? A lyric. Now, talking about ballad. Ballad is also a narrative poem, that is, it tells stories. But note that ballad is different from epic in the sense that a ballad tells stories of common people, unlike epic that tells stories of what? Of heroes. And ballads are written by ordinary people who are not poets. There are 2 types of ballad. We have the folk ballad and the literary ballad. The folk ballad are composed to be sung during festivals, and they are always about the common people and not the nobles or legend. The folk ballad is usually also in the oral form, that it is being passed by words of mouth from one generation to another, and these ballads can also be sung during traditional festivals. Now, talking about literary ballads are written by skilled writers, that's by skilled poets, and they imitate folk ballad. A literary ballad can fit in for the kind of poems that we have that talks about the plight of the people or the masses. It's always written down. Thank you. Now, talking about dirge. Dirge is a kind of poem that is inspired by the poet's grief or sorrow or lamentation at the death of a loved one. Dirge is a kind of poem that is written to mourn the death of a loved one. When you see, there are different expressions of sorrow. Some persons cry, some persons do a lot of things, while some persons sit down and put down their expressions in writing. And this is to show the feeling of sorrow that the person feels about the departure of their loved one. I hope you now understand these 4 types of poem. Thank you for joining in today's class. See you in the next class. Bye.